Imagine landing on a forgotten alien planet, only to find a forest that breathes, remembers, and watches you. When a human scientist enters the forbidden canopy, he doesn't just disturb the roots, he awakens something ancient, something hungry. A mysterious alien woman with living hair traps him in silence, claiming he carries the echo of someone long dead. But when the forest whispers in his mind and a shadow begins to rise from beneath the earth, he realizes he's not just a visitor. He's part of a prophecy. Will he survive the bond, or will the forest claim him like it did before? If you're new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the video. Now let's move to this wonderful story. The sky above Verdara 7 was unlike anything Oren Talon had seen before. It glowed with a gentle orange light that pulsed slowly, as if the planet itself was breathing. Tall trees stretched into the mist, their bark silver green, their branches curled like fingers reaching for the clouds. Vines shimmered faintly, glowing with soft blue light, and every leaf seemed to shift slightly even when the air was still. Oren adjusted his scanner and stepped into the wild light canopy. He had been warned not to enter. The Terran Science Division had marked this place Zone 9, a restricted area. The locals simply called it cursed. They said the forest here remembered too much, that it whispered back when you spoke. But Oren was not one to listen to stories. He had studied alien plant life on dozens of worlds, and nothing had ever truly scared him. Still, something in the way the forest watched him unsettled him. He moved carefully through thick undergrowth, pushing aside leaves that seemed too smooth, too perfect. The scanner beeped softly in his hand. Strange energy patterns pulsed beneath, the soil in a slow rhythm like a distant heartbeat. He paused, kneeling near a root that curled like a sleeping serpent. The energy was strongest here. He reached out to touch it. The moment his fingers brushed the bark, everything changed. The wind stopped. The light dimmed. And then he saw her. At first he thought it was a trick, just a shadow between two trees. But as he looked closer, he saw her clearly. A tall woman stood in the clearing. Her skin was pale with a faint shimmer like water under moonlight. Her hair, or what looked like hair, flowed behind her in dark, moving strands. It floated as if it were underwater, alive and alert. She did not move. She just watched him. Oren took a slow step forward. "Hello," he said softly. She did not answer. He stepped again, and the moment his boot touched the ground, vines snapped up around his legs. He looked down. Not vines, her hair. It had slithered across the ground like living ropes and wrapped tightly around his ankles. "Wait," he said, holding up his hands. "I'm not here to hurt you." The strands wrapped higher, binding his wrists, pulling him off his feet. He struggled, but the more he fought, the tighter they pulled. Then her eyes met his. They were large, bright, and glowing softly with pale green light. Still, she said nothing with her mouth, but a voice echoed in his mind. "You should not be here." Oren froze. He had never experienced anything like it. You're speaking inside my head?" "Yes." The voice was soft, calm, but it carried weight, like an old song sung by the wind. "Your presence has stirred the roots. The forest is listening again." "My name is Oren Talon," he said, breathing heavily. "I came to study the plants here. I didn't know anyone lived in this part of the forest." Her expression remained unreadable, but the strands of her hair loosened slightly, not enough to let him go, but enough to let him breathe. "You carry the same echo as the one who came before." "Someone else came here?" She nodded once. "Long ago." He called to the forest and it answered. Oren looked around. The trees seemed closer, now. The light had shifted. He could almost feel something pressing against his thoughts, like a dream that wasn't his. What happened to him? She did not answer at first. Instead, her hair lowered him gently to the moss-covered ground. Vines curled around him, not to trap him now, but to cradle him. The forest formed a cocoon around them. It was quiet, but not empty. The air vibrated softly like it was humming. "I am called Miraith." I'm Oren, he repeated, trying to sit up. Her hair loosened just enough for him to move. She watched him with eyes that held centuries of memory. You have touched the forest, and now it has touched you. He rubbed his arms, still feeling the pulse from where her hair had bound him. You said someone came before me. Do you mean a human? She nodded again. He spoke to the roots. And they remember his sorrow. Oren blinked. I don't know what you mean. I didn't call to anything. I'm just here to study. But the pattern inside, you matches his. The forest recognizes it. How? He asked. How can a forest recognize me? Maraith stepped closer. Her hair brushed against his hand. It was soft, warm, and strangely comforting. This is not just a forest, it is a memory. Living and breathing. It feels. It chooses. So what does it want from me? To survive. To remember. To bond. Oren felt his heart beat faster. Bond? With me? A sudden crack echoed through the trees. A distant roar followed. The ground trembled faintly. Maraith turned quickly. It has sensed the awakening. What has? Her voice sharpened in his mind. The maw of stillness. The one that feeds on memory. It is drawn to echoes like yours. Oren stood, unsteady. Then we need to get out of here. Maraith's hair shot upward, grabbing a thick branch above. Without warning, she wrapped one arm around him and launched them into the air. They swung through the canopy like wind-blown feathers. The vines supported them, guided them, danced with them. Oren had no control. He simply held on, the forest whipping past in a blur of gold and green. Below, something massive moved through, the trees. The sound of cracking roots and crushed stone echoed behind them. Oren risked a glance and saw a long, dark shape slithering through the undergrowth. Not a creature. Not exactly. It looked like bark, smoke, and broken bones tied together by hunger. They landed at last in a warm, glowing grove. Flowers pulsed like breathing lights. The forest here was different, softer, more alive. It felt like a memory made real. Maraith lowered Oren gently to the moss. Her hair pulled back, coiling behind her like a nest of sleeping shadows. You are not hurt. No, Oren said, breathless. Just overwhelmed. She nodded slowly. Your thoughts will begin to change. This place, it does not forget. Oren looked at her. Who was he? The one who came before me? Maraith looked away, her expression distant. He was the first to try. He failed. But the echo he left behind called to you. So you think I'm him? No. But you carry his breath, his sorrow, and the forest listens. Oren sat on the ground, staring at the glowing roots. The forest that remembers. A protector with living hair. A hunter born of silence and shadow. And he somehow caught in the middle of it all. For the first time, he wasn't sure if he had come to study the forest, or if the forest had called him home. Oren sat in silence, the moss beneath him warm and soft like old fabric. Around him, the grove shimmered with colors that shifted as if they had mood and memory. Glowing flowers opened and closed like lungs. Roots pulsed faintly with a gentle blue light. Everything felt alive, not just with movement, but with emotion. It was as if the forest itself was watching, remembering, breathing in rhythm with the visitors it had chosen to keep. Maraith stood a short distance away, her eyes closed, her hair slowly moving around her like threads stirred by wind. The air around her felt heavy with thought, though she didn't speak. Oren could still feel her presence in his mind, a soft echo behind every question he tried to ask himself. He had so many. He finally stood and took a step toward her. What did he do? He asked, his voice low. The one who came before me. Why does the forest remember him? Maraith opened her eyes slowly. Her gaze met his, calm but unreadable. He tried to stop the cycle. He believed he could seal the eater without a full bond, but he was wrong. The forest remembers his pain. Oren crossed his arms. What is this eater? You said it feeds on memory. How does something even do that? She looked at the glowing roots beneath their feet. It does not feed like you understand feeding. It consumes what connects. It drinks what binds. When it finds memories, it pulls them apart. And once they are gone, nothing remains. Oren shivered. So it doesn't just destroy the forest. It destroys who we were. Yes. She said it so simply, and that made it worse. The idea of losing even the memory of things, of smiles, names, dreams was too much. He looked around the grove. Is this where you live? No. This is where the forest hides its softest memories. It is a shelter for the echoes it cannot lose. Oren felt something shift beneath his feet. The roots moved slightly, not aggressively, but with curiosity. One curled slowly toward him, brushing his boot, then pulling back. It's like they're smelling me, he whispered. They are listening. They hear your echo now. So what am I supposed to do? He asked, frustrated. Am I supposed to fight this thing? I'm a scientist, not a warrior. Miraith stepped closer. Her hair reached out again, brushing his shoulder gently. You are more than that. You carry the mark. What mark? Your soul carries a pattern. One the forest knows. One it cannot ignore. He stepped back. Then it's a mistake. I didn't ask for this. Perhaps not. But you were chosen. And now, the eater has smelled your breath. A low rumble echoed in the distance as if the planet itself had sighed. Birds that had been resting in the high canopy above scattered in silence. The flowers dimmed slightly. The warmth in the grove faded. Oren looked toward the dark line of trees beyond the grove. Something moved between them, large and slow. It was far, but he could feel it. Miraith's hair began to rise again, drifting upward like smoke. Her eyes narrowed. Her voice in his mind turned sharp. We must move. Where? He asked, already stepping closer to her. To the place of first memory. The forest will guide us. Miraith's tendrils wrapped around his waist again. He felt the familiar pull as they launched upward. They swung through the air, the canopy racing past them in green and gold. The wind on his face was damp and warm. The leaves parted for them like ripples in a lake. As they moved, Oren noticed something strange. The deeper they went, the darker the forest became. Not from lack of light, but because the trees themselves had changed. Their bark was blackened at the edges. The leaves curled inward like clenched hands. The air grew heavier. This place feels wrong, he said. Miraith didn't answer right away. Her thoughts brushed against his, tense. The eater has passed through here. Recently? Yes, and the forest has not healed. They came to a sudden stop near a ridge of jagged stone. Below, in a shallow basin, lay the remains of a broken structure. Vines covered most of it, but parts of its shape still shone through. Smooth curves, panels of rusted metal, markings that shimmered faintly under the moss. Oren felt his heart skip. This is human, he whispered. This is a ship. Miraith floated down beside him. She approached the wreck slowly, her hand hovering just above the hull. It came before the eater was strong, before I was born. Oren stepped forward, brushing away vines from a section of the ship's side. Faded letters appeared beneath his fingers. Letters he could read. TAS observant, he said aloud. Earth Federation Scout Class. He swallowed. This ship is over 100 years old. Time does not move the same in the forest, she replied. Echoes are not bound by clocks. They entered through a half-open hatch. Inside, the ship was silent. Emergency lights blinked in deep red hues, casting shadows on the walls. Consoles were cracked, screens covered in dust. But some still flickered, faintly. Oren's footsteps echoed through the hallway. It felt like walking through a dream made from someone else's fear. He reached the bridge and froze. A figure sat in the pilot's chair. It was a skeleton. The suit was worn and decayed, the insignia faded, but the shape of the jaw, The curve of the brow? It was too familiar. Maraith said nothing. She simply stood beside him, her presence quiet. Oren stepped closer and reached for the small tag still attached to the suit's chest. The name was scratched but still readable. Oren Talon, he whispered. He stumbled back. No. No, that's not possible. Maraith's voice was a gentle whisper in his mind. It is not your body. But it was your echo. Your soul has walked this path before. This doesn't make sense, Oren said, shaking his head. This isn't science. It is memory. The forest does not care for your rules. One of the nearby consoles blinked to life. A low tone sounded, and then a voice began to play. A recording, Oren's own voice. To whoever finds this, the voice said, I failed. The eater was too strong. We couldn't stop it. Not like this. I think I've created a loop. If you're hearing this, you're the next me. Don't make the same mistake. Oren felt his knees grow weak. He sat down heavily on the cold metal floor. The ship groaned softly around them, like it was sighing. So I'm not here to study plants, he whispered. I'm here to finish what I couldn't do before. Maraith knelt beside him. Her tendrils reached toward his hand, not binding now, but resting gently. Yes, she said, but this time, you are not alone. Oren sat quietly on the floor of the broken ship, his back against a cold panel. The air inside was still, filled only with the low hum of dying power and the faint voice that had just played from the console. The voice had been his. There was no doubt. Same tone, same rhythm, same fear hidden behind calm words. But it came from a man who had died here a long time ago. A man with his name. A man with his face. A man who had tried and failed. Maraith stood nearby, her hair gently swaying, her glowing eyes watching him. She didn't speak, not with her mouth, and not yet in his mind. She gave him silence, and somehow that helped more than words. Oren ran a hand over his face, then stared at the skeleton in the pilot's seat again. The bones had collapsed into the chair like a puppet with cut strings. The suit was torn in places, the helmet cracked. He had died alone, surrounded by failing, lights and fading memories. How can this be real? Oren whispered. How can I be here again? Maraith finally stepped forward, her voice soft in his thoughts. Because time in the forest is not a line. It is a spiral, an echo, a memory that chooses to return. Oren looked up at her. But this isn't just time travel. This is something else, something deeper. You are the echo. You are the breath the forest remembered. But why me? He asked. What makes me different from anyone else? You carry his sorrow, his hope, his failure, but you still move forward. And that is why the forest gave you another chance. Oren stood, slowly. He walked around the small bridge of the ship, his boots echoing against the metal. He saw old logs, broken tools, faded charts. Everything was coated in dust and silence, yet he felt something beneath all of it, something alive. Like the walls remembered what had happened, like the forest was using this place to speak through time. So he tried to stop the eater, Oren said, but he couldn't. And now, I have to try again. Yes. What did he do wrong? He refused to bond fully. He held on to his name, to his past. He could not let go. And so the forest could not trust him. Oren looked down at his hands. They were shaking, not from fear, but from the weight of it all. He wasn't just a scientist anymore. He was a thread in something older, deeper, a cycle that might never end unless he changed it. How do I bond? He asked. What does it mean to become part of the forest? Maraith reached out. Not with her hands, but with her tendrils. They brushed, his arms, his chest, his face, soft, warm, not threatening. They pulsed faintly with light. You must open yourself, not just your mind, your fears, your memories, your wounds. The forest does not bond with the surface. It connects with the truth. Oren closed his eyes. He remembered the loneliness of his life on Earth, the long hours in labs, the silence in his small apartment, the people who passed by him without seeing him. He had chosen science over everything because it was safe, because data didn't hurt, but it also didn't heal. Miraith's tendrils wrapped around him slowly, not binding, but holding. He felt warmth spread through his body, like sunlight after a cold night. He felt her presence deeper now, not just in his thoughts, but inside his chest, his bones, his breath. He saw flashes of her memories, her childhood among the roots, the day the Eater first awoke, the first time she lost someone she had tried to protect. He gasped and opened his eyes. Tears slid down his cheeks. "I felt you," he whispered. "Your pain, and I felt yours," she replied. Their thoughts moved together now, like two rivers joining. He saw the forest through her eyes, how it pulsed with memory, how it whispered through soil and bark. And she saw Earth through his, its crowded cities, its empty hearts, its people searching for something they had forgotten. A sudden tremor shook the ground beneath the ship. Dust fell from the ceiling. One of the lights blinked out with a soft crack. Miraith turned her head sharply. "It is coming." "The Eater?" "Yes. It has sensed the bond beginning. It will try to destroy it before it roots." Orin felt the pressure return to his chest, the same fear that the other version of him must have felt. But this time, he would not run. He had bonded. Not fully, not yet, but enough to feel the forest breathing with him. "How do we stop it?" he asked. "There is one place left. The core of the forest. The seed of never after. It is hidden in the heart grove." Orin nodded. "Then take me there." Miraith wrapped her tendrils around him again, and they left the ship in silence. Outside, the forest had changed. It no longer shimmered with light. The leaves hung limp. The trees leaned away as if in fear. Even the vines had gone still. The sky above was darker, as if some shadow had stretched across it. As they moved, the air grew colder. The roots turned gray. Flowers that had once glowed with color were now dull and closed. The forest was pulling inward, afraid. It could feel the Eater coming. It could feel the end drawing close. But still, they pushed forward. They reached the edge of a cliff where a wide river had once flowed. Now, only cracked stones remained. Miraith reached out with her tendrils and lowered them slowly into a narrow path hidden by vines. They moved deeper underground where the air turned thick and warm again. The walls glowed with faint golden light. Roots twisted around them like veins. At last, they entered a vast chamber. In the center floated a small orb of light. It pulsed, like a heartbeat. Soft, steady, the seed of never after, Miraith said. Orin stepped closer. "It's beautiful. It holds the memory of all who bonded before. It is the forest's last hope. If we awaken it, the Eater will be sealed. But there's a cost, isn't there?" "Yes. Once sealed, the forest will never open again, and I will remain here, bound forever." Orin turned to her. "And me? If you take the seed's light into yourself, you will become part of the forest, not human. Not as you were." He looked back at the glowing orb. "And if I don't? The Eater spreads. It consumes all. Not just this world, but others." The chamber trembled again. A distant roar echoed through the roots. Orin reached out. His hand hovered above the seed. "I was afraid before," he said softly. "But not now. I know what I have to do." He turned to Miraith one last time. "I won't fail again." Her tendrils touched his hand, warm and steady. "This time, you are not alone." And together, they reached for the light. Orin's fingers hovered just above the glowing orb. The seed pulsed softly, its light warm and gentle, like the last breath of a sleeping world. His hand trembled slightly, not from fear but from the weight of what this moment meant. Once he touched it, nothing could remain the same. The forest had brought him here across echoes of memory and time, across lifetimes and forgotten dreams. And now it waited, quiet, alive, and listening. Behind him, Maraith stood still, her tendrils resting calmly at her sides. Her glowing eyes watched him with a softness he had not seen before. She was not just a protector now, she was part of the decision. Her fate, like his, was tied to what happened next. The chamber around them pulsed with faint light from roots that curled in slow, rhythmic waves. It felt like standing inside a living heart. "If I take this into myself," Orin whispered, "the eater will be sealed?" "Yes," Maraith said inside his thoughts. "But once the bond is complete, you will no longer be only you. Your body may remain, your voice may sound the same, but your soul will belong to the forest. The seed will rewrite your path." He looked at her, his voice lower now. "And you?" "I was shaped by the forest. If it is sealed, I cannot leave. My breath is its breath. I will remain in its heart forever." Orin closed his eyes. Her voice was calm, but he could feel the sorrow behind it. It wasn't just the fear of being trapped. It was the pain of saying goodbye. His chest tightened. Everything in him wanted to hold on to her, to this strange connection they had built, but he knew the choice was not about one life. It was about all life. A low rumble shook the chamber. Above, roots groaned as if straining to hold something back. The eater had found them. It was close now, drawn by the bond, by the seed, by the light that defied its hunger. Orin opened his eyes and looked once more at the glowing orb. He took a slow breath and stepped forward, then let it begin. His hand touched the seed. Instantly, light burst around him, not in a flash, but in a slow, rising wave that washed over the chamber. It flowed through his fingers, into his arms, his chest, and deeper still. He felt the warmth of the forest's memory enter him, not as words, but as feelings, images, and ancient songs. He saw Maraith as a child, growing in the cradle of roots. He saw Orak, the first echo, laughing beside her. He saw the eater rise, once a whisper, now a roar, and he saw the forest tremble. But then, he saw something new. He saw himself, not just as he was now, but all the versions he had ever been. A child left alone in the rain, a young man staring at stars through a lab window, a wanderer searching for meaning in the unknown. He saw them all, and they all reached out toward him, not in fear but in hope. The seed glowed brighter. Vines curled around Orin, lifting him slowly from the ground. They did not bind, they embraced. They wrapped around his chest, his shoulders, his face, gently pulling him into the heart of the forest. He did not resist. His thoughts became still, his fear fading into something new. Belonging. Maraith stepped forward and placed her hand over his. Her tendrils joined the vines, their light merging with the seed's glow. The bond deepened. Their memories touched. Their breath became one. Outside the chamber, the eater roared. Its massive form crashed through the upper roots, dark and shapeless, like a storm made of bark and bone. It pulled the light from the forest as it moved, turning leaves to ash, draining the color from flowers. The sky above cracked open and the air screamed in silence. But inside the chamber, the light only grew. Orin's body shimmered with golden light. The forest responded. Roots shot up from the ground, twisting and thickening, forming a shield above the chamber. The eater struck it once, twice, but the light held. It hissed, its hunger rising. It tried to reach them, to pull them into the dark. But the seed had rooted. Orin felt himself changing. He could no longer feel the ground beneath his feet. He floated, half in the forest, half in the memory. He saw everything. The whole world stretched before him like a web of light. Every root, every breath, every living thing. He was part of it now. And then, the final pulse came. A wave of golden fire burst from the chamber, spreading through the forest in all directions. It moved like wind, but heavier, full of soundless voices and long-lost laughter. It passed through trees, through soil, through stone. And when it reached the eater, it wrapped around it like light made of truth. The eater screamed. Not a sound, but a collapse. It crumbled, root by root, Memory by stolen memory. The shape fell apart like leaves turning to dust. And then, it was gone. Not destroyed. Sealed. Buried beneath the deep roots of the forest where no echo could awaken it again. In the clearing above, the sky brightened. The trees raised their limbs. The flowers opened once more. Deep in the chamber, the light began to fade. The vines unwrapped from around Orin. He slowly lowered back to the ground. The seed was no longer glowing. It had given all it had. The silence that followed was peaceful, calm. He looked around. Miraith was gone. "Miraith," he called, first aloud, then inside his thoughts. Nothing came back. The tendrils were no longer dancing in the air. The space she had stood in was empty. He placed a hand over his chest, hoping for a whisper. A breath. But there was only stillness. He walked out of the chamber slowly. The forest was quiet, but not lifeless. It was resting, healing. The path opened for him, not guided, just gently offered. He followed it, step by step, until he found himself back at the edge of the canopy, the place where it had all begun. A small pod waited for him, silver and silent. It had come from Earth, though he never saw it arrive. He climbed in, sat down, and closed his eyes. The return was quiet. When he arrived back on Earth, they tested him, asked questions, ran scans. They said his brain had changed, that his thoughts moved slower now, more steady, more natural. They said he was healthy, but different. They let him go. Weeks passed. Orin tried to return to his old life. Coffee, labs, reports. But something had shifted. Every time he touched a tree, it seemed to lean slightly toward him. Every breeze whispered words he almost understood. Then one morning he saw something in the mirror. His hair, short and dark, moved gently, not with the wind. The window was closed. He leaned closer, and then her voice, soft, warm. Inside his thoughts, "We are not alone." He smiled. Not with joy, not with sorrow, but with peace. Because the forest had lived, the bond had survived, and something new had begun.